We are joined in the studio with Paul Best from the Sittingbourne and Kemsley Light Railway. Can you give us a little bit of history about the Sittingbourne and Kemsley Light Railway?
Sure. The Sittingbourne and Kemsley Light Railway is a 2-mile narrow gauge railway between the old paper mill at Sittingbourne and the current paper mill at Kemsley. It was originally developed for the paper mill. It was 2'6" gauge, which means that's the gap between the rails is 2'6", which is a little bit along the same lines as the width of a horse.
Okay.
So it was originally a horse tramway. So in 1905 they decided that actually horse had its day and it was time for some steam engines, and they bought Premier and Leader and brought them into service around the Sittingbourne mill. And then in the 1920s the Milton Creek had started to silt up and it was getting a bit awkward to get the finished materials and the raw products in, so the line was extended to Riddon Dock, which had been purpose built for the mill. And then a new paper mill was opened at Kemsley, and it's Kemsley paper mill now that does all the work, and Sittingbourne has become redundant and closed. And in 1969 they decided that steam was now out and lorries were in, so they asked if anybody would like to take on the railway, and the Locomotive Club of Great Britain in 1969 said, okay, we'll give it a go, and took over the line between Sittingbourne and Kemsley and took track and locos and wagons and everything else from around the network to Kemsley Down and to Sittingbourne, and set up the Sittingbourne and Kemsley Light Railway. And we've been running as the Sittingbourne and Kemsley Light Railway since 1972, and the first public trains were in 1970. So we're just coming up to the 40th anniversary of public trains on the railway. And we've had a few incidents over the years because we've always had a rolling monthly contract, license to operate. So it's been very difficult to get grants or anything like that because we don't actually own anything, or we didn't. We're now beginning to own more and more, so we can start getting these the grants. But it did mean that in the 1990s the railway shut between Milton and Sittingbourne over the viaduct because it started to show its age and needed some work done, and we spent a good few years just operating from a site alongside Asda to Kemsley Down, and it didn't make us very much money. In fact, we ran at a loss, but what we did learn from that is that, you know, the fight must go on and we will see through in the end. And then the line we opened to Sittingbourne, and we renamed Sittingbourne Viaduct, and then we sort of formalised Milton Regis as a halt, but still with access to Asda, to the car park, because Asda have been really, really good. And then everything was going swimmingly year on year. We were getting higher and higher passenger numbers, and then in 2007 the mill shut at Sittingbourne, which was, it turns out, a devastating blow really to the railway, because basically it meant that the service corridor, which is what the railway operates over, is no longer required by the mill owner, which was MRIL, and they said that we had to leave, and fortunately they were very open. We were able to have meetings with them and negotiate for the future, but they still really want to sell the site at Sittingbourne, and that includes the viaduct and some of the line. But in 2009 they gave us a 100-year lease over a mile of track, but unfortunately that doesn't include any stations, so we've got a mile that goes from nowhere to nowhere.
All right.
And we're negotiating at the moment with the owners of St Regis Paper Mill for the Kemsley Down site, but we're still waiting for the sale of the Sittingbourne end before we can run into Sittingbourne. Now, on the positive side, that meant that we could have the gap year that we've had this year, which has not been running any passenger trains at the railway, but we have been getting on with loads of work down there. But you know, that's, although it sounds negative being closed for a year, we have got so much stuff done, and we've been able to take Melia out and about. So we've been very busy, and hopefully we'll be open in 2010 bigger and better than before.
We are joined with Paul Best from the Sittingbourne and Kemsley Light Railway.